Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 12th of May, 2023. Right, everyone, let's get into it. So, the biggest piece of news, I guess, or event that happened over the last 24 hours was an unfortunate bug in the beacon chain, or I guess like in one or more of the consensus layer clients that power the beacon chain. Now, the TLDR of this bug, firstly, is that there is no root cause that's been identified yet. There are still teams doing their investigations into this, but the network basically didn't finalize, I believe, for I think it missed like one finalization period. I was asleep when this all happened, so I don't remember it exactly because I woke up and everything was fine. And then I think there was at like 30 or 40 participation for a couple of epochs there, which obviously isn't ideal. Now, as I said, we don't know the root cause of this yet. People suspect it was an issue with Prism, but if it was just Prism, then we wouldn't have had as low of participation as like 40% because Prism only accounts for around, what was it? Last time I looked, 37.7% of the network. So yeah, the math doesn't add up there. But yeah, we'll probably get a post-mortem sooner rather than later on this one. But there's not been any kind of root cause identified here. Now, network wide, we saw some people missing attestations, some people not missing attestations. I went back and checked all of my validators individually when I woke up. It took a while, but I did it, and I didn't seem to miss any attestations that I could see. I checked on the Beacon Chain website to see if I missed any, and it looked like my setup was all good. You guys know I run Lighthouse, and I run a few different combos. I run Lighthouse and Geth and Nimbus and Nethermind, so those didn't have any issues, and I run multiple CL and ELs on my network, and it doesn't seem that I had any issues there, but I don't run Prism currently, so yeah, I don't know. As I said, I don't know if Prism is actually the root cause or not, but it seems like they may be, but we'll have to see, wait and see if when the post-mortem comes out. Now, of course, I've talked about client diversity a lot on the refuel, and I think this is the perfect time to talk about it again. This is why Ethereum has client diversity. Could you imagine if the Ethereum network was only one client? This would have taken the network offline, and there has been multiple instances of this over the years, of one client or something happening with one client or two clients, and the network's still chugging along. And I think I need to be clear on that as well for a lot of people, is that the Ethereum network did not go offline. It just was not finalizing the chain. Now, what this meant is that transactions were still being processed. And I saw a lot of people, obviously out of the Solana community, hitting back, because obviously whenever Solana goes down, everyone makes fun of them. But they were saying, look, Ethereum went down as well. I was like, no, that's actually not what happened. The Ethereum network favors liveness, which means that it can stay online even if a small portion of the network is only available during that period of time. So yeah, I just wanted to be clear on that. The Ethereum network did not go offline. It was still processing transactions and blocks, and the whole kind of, I guess, low participation and non-finality lasted around 25 minutes. So it wasn't actually very long. We've seen, the outages on Solana, for example, last, I think the longest one was almost 20 hours or something like that, and there had to be an off-chain coordination done in the Discord channel in order to get the chain started again. So those two things are completely different. And I normally don't bring up these things, but I thought it was worth bringing up because I just saw a lot of misinformation being spread, and I wanted to be clear on that one there. So yeah, the chain did not go offline, even though we don't have a root cause identification yet for how this happened. The network is back to where it was before the issue happened, and everything seems to be chugging along just fine. But yeah, this is the importance of client diversity. Now, Superfizz, of course, was all over this today. He is our client diversity champion, and he put out a tweet where he said, if a consensus layer client caused the loss of finality that we saw, we averted a fork by not having a supermajority client, and we could have avoided the loss of finality entirely if no client had more than 33%. And he continues, I'm proud of our diversity work, but we're not done. Now, you'll often hear me saying that I wish no consensus layer client or execution layer client was over 33% of the network here. And that's not just like an arbitrary number that I've pulled out of my behind, right? It is based on the fact that if no client has 33%, then we would not lose finality if one of them was to go offline for whatever reason or have a bug in it. So that's why we want to hit that number. Now, obviously, I'm trying to live in an ideal world here in my head, but I understand that reality is reality. So we may not never get to that end state, but that is the whole point of kind of like making sure, or at least trying our best to get to that state there. And I also think it's worth explaining exactly what finality is here and why it's important to Ethereum. So Essentially, in Ethereum proof of stake and a lot of proof of stake networks, because there is something at stake, you have something to slash, right? You have something to, I guess, like punish if something goes wrong. And in the case of finality, what it prevents or what it tries to prevent is reorgs. So a reorg or a reorganization of the chain basically means that, let's just say there was a 5-block reorg on Ethereum. That means that there were 5 blocks that happened that have been erased from the chain history and were replaced by 5 different blocks. Now, reorgs are relatively normal. They happen on both proof of work and proof of stake chains, but I'm talking reorgs of like 1 block on Bitcoin. 2-block reorgs are very rare, but we saw one the other day. And on Ethereum, under proof of work, reorgs were a lot more common. But in proof of stake, they are a lot less common because with proof of stake Ethereum, we have deterministic block times, which are called slots, with every 12 seconds. But where finality comes in is that past a certain point, and in Ethereum's case, it's 2 epochs, which is around 13 minutes, if I'm remembering correctly there is 1/3 of the total stake basically saying you cannot revert past this point. You cannot reorg past this point, right? So you cannot reorg, after 13 minutes without 1/3, I believe it's at least 1/3 of the network standing to get slashed. And that is a lot of ETH, right? That is a lot of ETH that would get slashed if a reorg was attempted here. So it is put in place for reorg protection. Now, of course, 13 minutes, it can be an eternity, right? We want to get that down as much as possible. Well, that's where single slot finality comes in, which single slot meaning every 12 seconds, every Ethereum block, we have finality. And this would mean, from my understanding, that the maximum reorg that you could do would be 1 block because you have 1 block finality, right? Which, I mean, 1 block reorg is kind of useless, pretty much like, it's not useless, but a lot of the time it's not worth it. And people do reorgs for different reasons. But yeah, that's kind of like a future thing that we want to do in Ethereum. We want to upgrade the chain to be able to do single slot finality. But right now we have that finality that kicks in after 2 epochs, which is around 13 minutes. And we want finality to prevent reorgs because reorgs are not great. They're definitely not great. Long reorgs are really bad. And I think that an analogy for proof of work here is a reorg can happen all the way back to block 0, basically all the way back to Genesis. But in proof of work's case, you would need to have the majority of the hash power, and you would need to compute that, remine that, so to speak, right? Maybe I'm using the wrong terminology here in order to get there. But what's really scary about proof of work having no finality is that you could technically, if you had the majority hash power, what you could do is that, so say you have 51% of the hash power, you could mine another fork of Bitcoin, I'm using Bitcoin as an example because it's the biggest proof of work chain, obviously by far. But what you could do is you could mine a fork of Bitcoin with 51% of the hash power for like a month, let's say, and then you decide, well, I'm done doing this. Now I want this chain to join to become like the main Bitcoin network. And what you do is essentially you override the network that everyone thought was Bitcoin with your chain, because Bitcoin consensus follows the heaviest chain, and your chain is the heaviest because you've accumulated more proof of work because you had more hash power than the I guess like original Bitcoin chain did. And what this would mean technically is that you would reorg a month's worth of Bitcoin blocks, and that would be catastrophic, right? That would be absolutely disastrous if that happened. That is basically something that could, I don't know if it would kill Bitcoin, but it would damage it very, very severely, because what this would mean is that the attacker that has all that hash power could literally do anything with their own chain that they wanted, right? And by reorging the chain, even if they did nothing malicious, and all they did was replace the chain with empty blocks, essentially, because there were no transactions, because it was a fork of Bitcoin, they would basically wipe out 1 month's worth of transactions, from my understanding at least. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but this is my understanding of how this would work. And what that would mean is that, let's say you sent Bitcoin to an exchange like 29 days ago and you sold it for fiat, and the exchange has that BTC on their balance sheet. Well, no, in this new chain that just replaced a month's worth of Bitcoin blocks, that exchange wouldn't have that anymore, right? Because you never sent it, technically, according to the chain. You never sent that Bitcoin to that exchange, so you have it, and the exchange is on the hook for that. So Yeah, reorgs are scary. They're not good. That's why we have finality, and that's why we want to progress towards single slot finality, or at least that's the major reason. There are a couple of other benefits for finality there, but yeah, I've spent enough time, I think, on this topic here. So I just want to quickly move to one other tweet around this topic today, which came from GatenSemp.eth here, who said, Gaspar is truly an amazing consensus algorithm. For those of you who don't know, Gaspar is the name given to the consensus algorithm that powers the Beacon chain. It is the combination of two things, which is Caspar, the friendly finality gadget, which is the finality part of the consensus mechanism, and the G. Oh, the name is eluding me right now, but the G stands for something here. I believe it's I've lost the terminology right now, but the G stands for something right here, and two of those things make Gaspar, which powers the Ethereum beacon chain here. I believe Gaspar is the fork. I believe the G is the fork choice rule. Yeah, it is. It's something. It's Ghost. That's right. It's LMD Ghost. Then Ghost, GHOST, stands for something. It's like greedy, heaviest, something. I don't remember exactly what it stands for, but that is the fork choice rule, and Casper is the finality gadget, and those two things make the Ethereum beacon chain consensus. Oh, here it is. It says here LMD Ghost, and then Gateson continues and says, lose the 66% threshold for the validators, and Casper, the finality gadget, the epoch won't finalize, but blocks keep being validated by LMD Ghost. Most BFT chains, such as Tendermint Chain, which is something like Cosmos, and Solana, halt when they lose 66%. So that's what I mean when Ethereum favors liveness. It favors being online over just kind of, I guess, like having all the validators online to stay online, right? So it can even operate with a low amount of active validators there. But hopefully that explains that for you. Obviously, I will cover the postmortem when we get one. Hopefully it is out by the time I do Monday's refuel. All right, onto some other Ethereum core news here. So Tim Biko put together another Ethereum All Core Devs Call Twitter thread. The core focused on 4844 with some brief discussion of L2 EIPs and overall Cancun planning. So obviously, things have moved right into planning for Cancun and all the EIPs that are going along with that. I've mentioned before how 4844 is the driver of the upgrade, with a bunch of passenger EIPs coming along for the ride that aren't finalized yet. Some of them are already included. Some of them are considered for inclusion. We won't know exactly which EIPs are going to be going into the upgrade until maybe, I think, like 2 to 3 months before it goes live on mainnet. And even before then, even after then, some could drop from the list here. But yeah, you can read Tim Biko's thread for a recap of the latest call. It's not too long, but it's great as usual. So I'll link that in the YouTube description below for you to check out. All right, so another tweet from Superfizz that I actually maybe should have talked about before, but I'll talk about it now just very quickly. He tweeted out, let's do a history lesson. When Prism was a supermajority client, Michael Sproul from the Sigma Prime team developed a tool to fingerprint blocks, which is 0x Invis developed data to know what client services were running, and Hani developed clientdiversity.org to get the data out. They're heroes. And basically what they did was they showed just how, I guess, like bad client diversity was on Ethereum, and that led to that big social push that you saw led by Superfizz quite a while ago now, that got people to switch from Prism to a minority client. And that's why the client diversity on Ethereum looks a lot better today. So yeah, you have these people to thank for the clientdiversity.org website and the data that feeds into that website. All right, so the Beacon Chain Twitter account shared today that Visa has taken a dive into Ethereum staking and has said that they rely on the Beacon Chain website as a trusted source. So there's an article here that they kind of highlighted talking all about Ethereum staking, which is very cool to see on Visa's official website here. And they break down how it all works. And why this is cool to see is because it might not be cool for someone like us or people that watch the refuel, obviously, who know a lot about Ethereum staking already. But this is really great for existing Visa customers, whether they be consumers. I think it's less on the consumer side and more on, I guess, like the institutions and enterprise and business side of things that can read this post and be like, okay, what is this Ethereum staking thing? And then once they read this, they'll get a good understanding of it. Obviously, they're not going to become experts just from reading one blog post, but it really does break this stuff down. And I've mentioned before how I believe Ethereum staking is just going to get so stupidly big, especially amongst like institutions and big, I guess, custody providers as well. Because if you're a custody provider and you have a lot of customer ETH, you're not going to just let that ETH sit there, because you're going to think to yourself, wow, okay, I can actually stake this ETH. I'm going to offer this product to my customers. I'm going to take a fee, because there are already big staking providers that take massive fees. I believe Coinbase's fee is like 25% or something, and they haven't exactly lost any market share. They've been gaining market share. So people seem to be happy to pay that fee, but their fee is quite high. Now, could you imagine like a company seeing this and they're custodying a lot of ETH and they're like, wow, wait, okay, maybe I can take like a 15% fee and just offer this product to my customers, and then they'll get like a yield. Or maybe they can even take a higher fee because their customers aren't even going to know. They're going to be like, oh, I have ETH. Oh, it's staking now, and I get like 2 to 3% or something like that. And then and then the provider takes the rest for themselves, right? So that's what these posts I think are good for just getting the word out there about how amazing ETH staking is, and how like it is a real yield here, especially with the fees and the MEV rewards that you can earn. That is a real yield being paid by real users. Obviously, when it comes to the consensus layer rewards, people will say it's not a real yield because it's just issuance, right? It's just inflation. But even that, I mean, that is so low, right? That is so low in terms of like network-wide inflation and network-wide issuance, that it really shouldn't even factor into the way you think about this, because it's under 1%, right? Like that is such a tiny portion. And if you believe that there's less than 1% net demand for ETH each year, right, then you're not bullish ETH. So I think that when you look at it and you look at the real yield that you get, the literal real yield that you get from the fees and from the MEV, I guess from tips and MEV. And then on top of that, you get the consensus layer rewards, which are offset by the fee burn anyway, because I mean, if you really think and talk about the issuance, you have to talk about how it's offset by that. It gets very bullish once you understand all that. And I hope that these posts can get people that may not have been interested in this stuff before, not aware of it before, to dive deeper and potentially stake any ETH that they may be holding. All right, so Google has integrated Ethereum address searching into their, I guess, like a search bar here. So you can paste in any Ethereum address and it will show you the balance of that address as the top results on Google here. So I pasted in my sassal.eth address here, and you can see my Ethereum balance at sassal.eth with a link to Etherscan. Now, of course, this leaves a lot to be desired. As cool as it is, I would like to see my token balances. I would like to be able to use my ENS as a name instead of just like my whole Ethereum address, because I had actually initially searched sassal.eth just out of kind of habit and out of intuition there, but it didn't display anything except the Etherscan results, the Etherscan web page result, right? Not the actual kind of a little information box that it has here. So yeah, I'd love for them to integrate that. Token balances, maybe NFT holdings as well, display them since Google results can be rich as well. That stuff would be very cool. But it's very cool to see that they've taken this leap and they've done this year, and it's just great to be able to visualize this really quickly. In saying that, I mean, we have Etherscan, right? This is more of a quality of life thing, because you can just go on Etherscan and search this and it'll give you all the details anyway. But I think it's great to just have more options when looking at balances on chain. All right, so there is a Twitter account called Meta Lawman that I come across from time to time, who breaks down various different things happening in the, I guess, like crypto/regulatory space here. So he put out a tweet today saying the US Chamber of Commerce has just filed a brief in the Coinbase v. SEC case, calling out the SEC for acting unlawfully in the digital asset space. This is the US Chamber of Commerce, not the Chamber of Digital Commerce, and this is a big deal, and he explains why here. So basically, what seems to be happening right now is that the people whose voice can actually matter for like real change are starting to call out the SEC on their bullshit. And not just like bullshit of, okay, not providing a framework for people to register these crypto securities and not providing guidance to exchanges like Coinbase, but also for literally doing things in an unlawful way, which means they're literally not following the law that they have to follow, especially because they're a government agency, right? So I'm glad to see this. I'm glad to see it being called out. As I said, Coinbase fighting the SEC in court is not something that the SEC wants. I think I really do think that they thought Coinbase would just fold and pay the fine or kind of shut down whatever products that they were that the SEC said were in violation here, but that's not what they are doing. They are fighting on crypto's behalf. They are fighting on behalf of us, and it's great to see movement happening here. As I've said before, I do think that a lot of the concerns around regulations are overblown. I do think that it moves slow, but over time it's going to get a lot better. We have people in our side of the court now. There are a lot of a lot of politicians that are crypto friendly. It just seems to be right now that the Democratic, I guess, like leaders or party leaders are the ones that are mostly anti-crypto. There are a lot of Democrats that are actually pro-crypto. Obviously, a lot of Republicans are also pro-crypto in the US. I really hate that it became such a divisive issue, to be honest. I hate that this can't just be something that is bipartisan and people can't just these people just can't agree to provide clarity on these sorts of things and let this industry flourish. But yeah, I mean, they are kind of reaping what they sow, because I saw Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, taking pictures with leaders in foreign countries like the United Arab Emirates. And imagine you are a US kind of senator or a politician. You see that one of the biggest companies, or the biggest US-based company in the crypto space that has generated billions of dollars of economic activity for the US economy is, their CEO is now in other nations and moving his operations offshore with that new exchange that they launched the other day. And imagine you seeing that and thinking that was positive, and then your voters see that and they they kind of write you and they say, "Dude, what the hell? Like, what's going on here? Why is Coinbase going offshore, doing this or doing that?" So it all counts. I think it all adds up, and I do think it's going to get better over time. I don't think it's actually going to get much worse from here. I don't think there's going to be like an outright ban on crypto or anything like that, at least in the US or like most places in the world. I don't think that there's going to be any sanctions on like the blockchains themselves. I'd be very surprised if that happened. Like, if, for example, if OFAC sanctioned the Ethereum chain or sanctioned the Bitcoin chain. There is a chance that happens. I would be very surprised, but at the same time, it's not something that could kill any of these chains, and it would hurt a lot of individuals and a lot of businesses that it just wouldn't really wouldn't really go forward. It wouldn't really stand here. So yeah. Anyway, you can read Meta Lawman's thread here. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so I don't know if I covered this a while ago. I don't know if this was teased a while ago, but you can now buy, I guess, like crypto via MetaMask with PayPal. So MetaMask and PayPal have teamed up to allow US users to buy ETH using their PayPal account. So there is a guide here on this blog post of how to get started and everything like that. This may not be something that's interesting to you because you probably already know how to buy crypto in the cheapest way without paying high fees or anything like that through centralized exchanges like Coinbase and Kraken and all those and any other one, depending where you are in the world. So yeah, but this is cool because I think that it gets a lot of people that may trust PayPal into crypto, and they may not trust like Coinbase, for example, or maybe they just want an easier way to buy into crypto. Well, this is one way to do it. But yeah, you can maybe send this blog post to people that you know are on the fence and want an easy way to buy crypto. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do that. All right, finally here we have a couple of bullish tweets from yours truly to round out this week of Ethereum news. So my first tweet was that I said, I love how the entire market has been bleeding nonstop for like a week now, and crypto Twitter is pretty much dead silent about it. This is the clearest sign I've seen so far that we're now firmly in the time-based capitulation part of the bear market. Now, I had someone ask me in the comments, what do I mean by time-based capitulation? Well, there are two types of capitulation here. There is price-based, where the price bottoms out. Now, obviously, that happened for ETH back in June of 2022, where it went to $880. And for BTC, it happened in November of 2022, where it went to $15,400. Now, these are the bottoms so far. I'm not saying that it's 100% not going to go below that, but those seem to be the bottoms that have been carved out as part of this cycle so far. So that is price-based capitulation. Now, the second type is time-based capitulation, where the time bottom is set. Now, this basically means that the price of ETH or BTC or whatever hangs around in a somewhat wide-defined range for 12 plus months, but it doesn't set a new bottom. So in 2019, this was when ETH was ranging between like $100 and $360. And you can go look at the chart for that year, and that's exactly what ETH did. It did not set a new bottom. Then in 2020, obviously the bull market started again and we were off to the races. The COVID dump I usually ignore because that was like a one-off black swan. And if you actually remove the COVID dump from the chart, you can actually see how much of an anomaly it is. So I usually ignore that. But even then, ETH did not set a new bottom. So I think that was quite interesting too. But that's time-based capitulation. And the reason why it happens like that is because you have a lot of apathy after the market nukes. You have a lot of people that got wrecked. You have a lot of people that have left the ecosystem. The people that are in the ecosystem are the ones that are already, holding a lot of crypto. They're probably already all in, and the only extra crypto that they can buy now is with income that they get from, their job or from wherever else. And that happens over time, right? They don't have any more capital to buy the dips because they already bought the dips. That's what we have with price-based capitulation. Time-based takes time because you need to wait for more people to get more money, and you need to wait for them to spend that money, to have confidence in buying crypto with that money, and then slowly the price goes up again, and then we have the bull market, right? And that's exactly what happens and what has happened for a long time now, and not just crypto, but I think all markets generally, but I think crypto it's especially obvious, and especially kind of what's the word I'm looking for here? I've forgotten the word, but it's very strong. It's a very strong kind of thing in crypto because it's so retail driven, so retail heavy. So that's what I meant by that there. And now this is a segue into another tweet that I put out, which was a reply here to Marceau, where I said the feeling I get right now about ETH is the same feeling I got in 2019. Price was doing nothing good, but the ecosystem was thriving with many upgrades on the way, such as EIP 1559 and the merge, which were meant to improve ETH as an asset. And the core DeFi infrastructure was also being built out. Then DeFi summer happened and the rest is history. So the reason I'm getting the same feeling is because right now we're in the middle of having a time-based capitulation for ETH and BTC. They are just stuck in this kind of wide range. For ETH right now, it seems to be like $1,000 to $2,200. For BTC, I think it would be like, I don't know, 17 or 18,000 or something like that, and 30K, right? So we're stuck in that range right now, but on the Ethereum side of things, there is so much kind of being built, so much being developed, so much happening across all kind of things like the core protocol, layer 2s, the apps, that it really does give me the same feeling. Because if you look at ETH as an asset right now, I think ETH as an asset is incredibly undervalued right now. It's not showing up in the price of ETH, all the developments that have happened. The merge has still not shown up in the price of ETH. I don't think the burn has. I don't think the fact that ETH is such a strong internet bond that people have been calling it with staking, I don't think its future growth is priced in either. So I don't think any of this stuff is showing up right now. And that's simply because we have to go through our time-based capitulation. Now, eventually when this does show up, it will be because it will all this stuff has been built, all this stuff has been delivered, all this stuff has been happening in the background, and I do think that the next bull market is definitely going to be a huge thing for layer 2s. I do think that Base, which Coinbase is going to launch hopefully soon, will play a big part as well, but layer 2s generally will. And I do think we're going to get like a similar, I guess, like layer 2 summer as we got to like DeFi summer, like an actual one. But also on top of that, I think that ETH staking is going to just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and become a much more vibrant and potentially degen ecosystem, and that will lead to like an ETH staking summer. So I think that I'm very confident in like there being an L2 summer and an ETH staking summer at some point, where I guess there's a lot of new money coming in and there's a lot of new money to be made, that things just go absolutely bonkers. But that's going to take a while to play out. It's gonna happen, I guess, probably towards the tail end of the time-based capitulation, and it's going to happen when things start heating up again. But once it gets going, guys. Like, bear markets are brutal. Don't get me wrong. They're brutal. They can be boring. They can be depressing. But bull markets, I believe, are more crazy than bear markets are brutal. That's for sure. So yeah, just a bit of bullish kind of talk to round out this week's episode of Refuels. But that's going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all next week. Thanks everyone.